All right. So the process of normalizing, to just kind of give you guys an example, if everybody took a 200 question exam and you listed the number of questions that you got right. So let's just say I got 100 out of the 200 right, Ranger got 150 out of the 200 right. What swgoh was doing first was just listing my score, or in this case that you're using potency. They were listing mine as 100 and they were listing Ranger as 150. And what they did by normalizing is essentially say, okay, my score was actually 100 out of 200, so they made my score 50 instead because it's 50%. And Ranger went from 150, but it was 150 out of 200 questions, so they moved him down to 75%. So that's essentially what normalizing does. It changes it from a scale where it can be from 0 to infinity, or even less than, it can be from negative infinity to positive infinity. They changed it so it's on a scale from 0 to 1, and then they put it on whatever larger scale that they want. So they can make 0 to 1 go to 0 to 100 by multiplying by 100, and so on and so forth. So what happened with normalizing that T-Bow went from being 80 to 21? If you looked, and I had these kind of set out earlier, the highest potency of any character in the game was Dooku, and his potency was 290. If you make your scale, just like I mentioned before with the 200 questions, if you make your range of potency from 0, which is what Sidious had, to 290, which is what Dooku had, what they did was then divide everybody's potency by 290 in order to get your normalized potency score. The problem, and this is where the little bit of a mini nerf comes in, if you divide your character's previous potency without mods by 290, you would get a value between 0 and 1. On a scale from 0 to 100, you would then multiply by 100 and get your score. If you do Dooku, who had the highest one, on a scale from 0 to 100, he should actually be the 100%. However, after they normalized, his potency was 75. So the fact that it was 75 means that they didn't normalize it from 0 to 100. They actually normalized the old scores from 0 to 75. So if you guys go back, and I don't know if you took screenshots of your characters or if you remember what they were, if you take your character's old potency, divide it by 290, and then multiply it by 75, which is a scale that they used, you would get your character's new potency after the normalization without mods.
Yeah, my Dooku right now is at 102.52% potency. I just pulled that up on the screen for you.
Okay. So what happens then is now mods actually became even more powerful. Because before they normalized it, during that time period where mods were thought to be overpowered, they were adding the percentage on top of whatever you had, and then it became normalized. It became included in that. So Dooku went from being 290 to, let's just suppose that you added this 27.52 that you have with the mods on Dooku. If you add that onto top of that, you are now at 317.52, I think. Okay? And then if you divide that by 290 till you normalize it, your value above 100 is going to be just slight. Versus what they're doing now is they normalize the raid gear first and then add the mod changes on top of the potency. So mods actually have an even bigger impact on potency than it did before, assuming that you're going to normalize all these values. But what they did is then scale back the potency. So what this is, why I'm mentioning this is that T-Bow wasn't necessarily nerfed to a large extent. If you normalized his 80% potency on a scale from 0 to 100, his potency would have been somewhere around 28 or 29. They made his potency 21. It seems like they wanted to have the other 25% accounted for by mods in some way. So the most important thing about T-Bow, and I think a lot of people figured this out, is that at 80% potency, he was pretty much getting about 50-50, maybe a little bit better RNG on getting turn meter reduction on the captain in phase 1. So 80% was a good cutoff for everybody to kind of think, okay, if my character has 80% potency, he should be able to get some hits on phase 1 in order to get turn meter reduction or whatever other debuff that they were trying to get. So when you normalize that value, the number that you're looking at now isn't really clear. We haven't run a raid yet in the Mighty side. We're going to run that tomorrow. But if you just normalize the 80 value, you're looking at about 28 to 29. And if you're trying to account for that 25%, if you add 25% on top of Tebow's 21, you're looking at about 46. So it looks like now for phase 1, the potency percentage that you're looking for in order for your character to be viable is somewhere between 28 and 46. Does that make sense, Ranger?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's kind of what happened with normalizing. It really wasn't a nerf. It was mainly just a scaling back of how much effect raid gear had. They went